Hello, this is Raquel Dubois from Raquel Dubois Embodied Presence Training. I said I would come on today and speak to you about the voice and the vagus nerve when you're presenting. Okay, I'm remembering to take off my glasses because I know sometimes they kind of create this kind of purple reflection that's a bit ugly. So I'll take them off, and I don't want to give you a big anatomy lesson, but what I want to do is talk about how important the voice is when you're presenting, because the human ear is designed to, in particular, to pick up the sound of human voices and to interpret whether they're a threat or not. So, the way our biology is organized is that if a low tone, so a low voice or a low tone of any description, it's actually, the way we hear it is actually through our jawbone. So hearing is a vibration. So the vibrations of a low tone will be received by our jawbone, and then that in turn vibrates our ears and allows us to hear the sound. So biologically and anatomically, we're designed, when we receive any kind of low tone and we hear it in our jaw first, because that's where the vibrations are received, we sense that as a predator. So unfortunately, men's voices, or the male voice, is at a slight disadvantage, because a lower voice is inclined to send that signal regardless. However, they don't lose out completely, because even more important than the tone of the voice is what's called the prosody of the voice. So the prosody of the voice is the variations of the voice, that it's not flat. So it almost, like if you would like to think about it as a singing voice, right, or a voice that's a sing-song kind of voice, that's actually going to have the most appeal to our physiology and our biology. Australians have this habit of kind of talking, and you know what I mean, and they raise at the end. It's actually it's actually a ingenious way of introducing some of that sing-song, because we actually, in our the Australian accent tends to be a bit flat. The mouth is kind of kept a little narrow out and closed. We're always trying to make sure that the flies don't get in, so we can tend to actually have a slightly flat voice. But if we talk about, and we end our sentences going up, then we can actually kind of make some allowances or adjustments for the listener, so that there's a little bit of that prosody. But if you listen to my voice, you'll notice how there's a continual change in the pitch, in the pace, in the toning. All these things are really important. If you go into a presentation and you just shout at people at the same level, you're going to be sending little vibrations to their lower jaw for a start, saying this is dangerous. And then if there's no prosody at all in the voice, and there's no kind of pauses or intonations, then regardless of how powerful your content, it's actually going to send these unconscious messages to your listeners' biology or audience's biology about that there's actually a danger present. Now, I'm extremely sensitive to sound, and I know a lot of people who have trauma in their bodies have the same responses to sounds that I do. And I find that there's a lot of people on Facebook I actually can't listen to. Their voices just, they sound like, to me, just like a single kind of pitch. It's maybe not, it's a little bit high, but it's not like super high, but it's just all the one kind of screamy pitch. that's how my ears receive it. I'm sure that that isn't necessarily the case, but when we get that kind of single screamy voice that's trying to deliver a pitch, where often it's just because we're a bit nervous. So sometimes when people are more nervous, their voices go up an octave. I had a client who used to say that every time she asked for the sale, her voice would go up 3 octaves until she started working with me. And I notice a lot of presenters have the same thing. And so what we want to do, and I know it does really come from the nervous system to be able to truly hold the space for the voice at the perfect pitch. But we can actually try and play with that a little bit and try and encourage some of that in. Another way to it's a little hack, if you like. I'm not a great fan of hacks. I don't really like them. But to remember that we take in information around whether somebody is safe or not around their smile, but it's not the smile that comes from their mouth. It's a smile that comes from the eyes, because the vagus nerve, actually, it's a cranial nerve 10, and it travels down the face. It innervates the muscles of the eye down the face, through the lips and through the chin and down the side of the neck to the sinus of the heart. So this is why the heart meditations at Heart Math Institute are so powerful, because when we connect into the sinus valve of the heart that's innervated through the vagus nerve, we're actually connected into our relational field. And that's a field where we can smile from the eyes, we can hear things that feel like they're bringing in more safety. So when we hear the perfect voice for the human ear is actually somewhere around a female voice. So again, as I said, apologies, but females do have a slight evolutionary advantage around their voice, but it's not entirely so. But it also needs to be modulated. What happens is that we actually, instead of hearing it through our jawbone, which is how we hear the sounds of unsafety, danger, we actually hear it through these little muscles in our ear. And these little muscles in our ear, there's floating bones there. It's actually the bones that we hear it. So around the floating bones, there are muscles. So the same with how danger is sensed through our jawbone, safety is sensed through these floating bones in our ear. Okay, and they float. They're not in a fixed thing. So when they get to vibrate, we get a sense of, oh, it's safe. So this perfect pitch voice will actually vibrate those little floating bones in our ear. So, and we know that there are male singers, for example, or male actors who do that. So it's not just a female thing, but women do have a slight advantage that it just seems to hit that particular frequency that can actually vibrate those bones in the ear in a way that can elicit the biological safety response. So we have to be really mindful about our voices, and the best way to do that is through intonation and prosody. Variation is another way of describing some of these things. But if you think about a sing-song voice, I think that's probably the easiest way, and to practice that. So you get in front of a mirror and you just practice talking to yourself in a whisper, and you see what it's like to talk to yourself in a whisper. And if you do that, you can actually, you notice your hearing changes, right? You can actually tune into your voice in a different way, right? There's a kind of like an intensity that's kind of delicious because you're hearing in a different way. Okay, it's actually because the little bones are being vibrated in a different way. So that's why a lot of people like ASMR, which is, you know, all about the whispering and the making sounds, the little sounds, right? Some people have a response to that. Not everybody likes it. Okay, you know, we each have our variations. It's like not everybody likes the same kind of music. And, you know, I heard somebody saying on Facebook the other day, not about sounds, but how much they like the smell of petrol. And I thought, oh my God, it's just like one of the worst possible smells. But some people like the smell of petrol. So we all have different tastes, but this is a biological and a physiological thing, you know, that unsafe sounds are received through our jawbone, and they tend to be lower frequency sounds and tend to be monotonous and kind of single and flat. And then more safe sounds are received through the little floating bones in our ears, in our middle ear, and they are often very, you know, modulative and variable, that little bit of a sing-song, and often at the pitch of a normal kind of female voice. So just to bear that in mind when you're presenting, because I really feel like it's a key thing. I turn off a lot of people. And actually, when I try to listen, I don't take anything in. Like, even if I sit there and I say, it's okay, I know that they're sending these cues of unsafety to my biology, but can I possibly, you know, get some information from this person? I can't. I actually can't do it. So I'm sure that lots of people are in the same boat, particularly if you have trauma or you've got intergenerational trauma. This is actually what we're really understanding now, is that it's already, you know, when we are in the egg of our mother. So when she is a child and we are just an egg, then we've already taken on those birth imprints of the trauma. So that is also born in our physiology, and it's not genetic, it's epigenetic. So that's a conversation for another day, but I wanted to have this conversation today about how you can actually make your presentations better, and it's really by paying attention to your voice. And, you know, I mean, I've worked with singers before, and I've had a similar experience with my own voice, that when I actually completed and when they finished doing nervous system work with me, they found that they had a completely different voice. So there's the hack, which is obviously what I'm suggesting to you to consider today, but there's also this deeper possibility of when you actually get more space in your nervous system, then you can actually have a completely different change of voice. So I just over a year ago, I started taking singing lessons. I'd never had a singing lesson before. I had sung in choirs and even small groups as a kid, but then kind of didn't really do any singing. But just over a year ago, I started taking singing lessons, and I turned up to the singing lesson for the first time, opened my mouth and started to sing. And my singing teacher said, holy shit, do you know you can sing opera? And I said, I've never heard that voice before. Because I'd done all of this nervous system work, and I had a completely different voice because there was so much more space inside. We actually sing and speak through all the gaps and the cavities that are in our bodies. So any little spaces that you have, we can actually direct the sound through those spaces. A lot of times, you know, singers know about directing sound through the sinus cavities. And so when we create more space in the nervous system, we have this opportunity to even our voices change dramatically. And I've had that with other singers and performers and speakers in the past. People I've worked with, they've also been similarly surprised by the change in their voice. Now I can see that there's a few comments, and I will need my glasses to check the comments, so bear with me. Well, I'm looking at Anna's comment, do you think we should be mindful of our own voices more than being mindful of other people's voices? And I think that's a personal choice. We can when we're growing up, our environment will dictate to us whether we tend to pay more attention to the outside or the inside, because it depends on how much safety we've grown up with. It depends on how much we feel like we need to pay attention to the outside and what might be responding to us from the outside. So on some way, it's actually a physiological, biological imperative. We almost can't override that without, again, conscious work over what our natural tendency would be, whether we're going to pay attention to the outside or the inside. So in the nervous system work, we would actually try to repattern that and give somebody more options. So we never turn around and take the strategy away from the person. What we want to do is say, let's add another strategy. So if somebody's normal default response would be to anything, would be, oh my God, the environment's what's causing my problem, right? So outside is the noisy thing and it's creating something inside, but they're actually paying a lot of attention to the outside. That's how they determine their sense of safety. What we want to do is not take that away, but we want to actually bring on an opportunity for somebody to be able to determine their sense of safety in another way, an alternative way. So it's never to say that the first strategy is wrong, but it's to say, well, can we bring in more options? And ideally then the neural pathways start to strengthen towards maybe the healthier or the less or the more adaptive option, the sort of more functional option, the option that serves the function of the organism better. And in most cases, it's the healthier way of serving the function of the organism to be more connected to their inner experience. But the outer experience is important too, so we don't want to take that away. So, I feel like that's an opinion that I can't really make, but I feel like we actually need both. Hopefully that kind of makes sense to you, Anna. I think it's really, there's a lot of stuff that's really the answer is both rather than either or. So it's a both and kind of answer and question. And Candy's just made a point. Yes, I didn't even know that I could sing opera. I mean, I really like opera, but I didn't have a clue. Yeah, it's really possible. Yeah. And I've seen it. It's not just my own experience. I have worked with actors, singers, musicians, performers, and they've all had similarly kind of unusual transformations in their craft. So that is all. I'm so glad. Thank you so much for coming in and asking some questions, Candy and Anna. That's really lovely of you. I really appreciate that. It's really nice to have you join me so I could answer some questions. And I think that's all for today, because I'm actually coming to you live between clients today. I decided that there was a way that I could still make my commitment to do a live, but I would do it between clients. So I've now got 10 minutes to prepare for my next client. So I'm going to go and do that. And I hope you found this valuable, useful. It's just something to kind of contemplate and think about. When we're presenting webinars or doing a training, those sorts of things in particular, but even our short lives are, really important how our voices come across. And that cranial nerve and the vagus nerve, when they're online, then you just feel more safe to the people you're talking to.